Hi there, welcome to Dr. 2 Academy. This is Java tutorial for beginners, lesson 12. The topic of this lesson is Java polymorphism. We know there are four most important concepts regarding object-oriented programming. They are inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and abstraction. In lesson 11, we have learned inheritance. Now we are going to learn polymorphism in this lesson. So what is polymorphism? Polymorphism means one object can have many forms. The polymorphism is achieved by inheritance. There are two ways to do the polymorphism: method overloading and the method overriding. Method overloading means methods with the same name, but the method have different parameter lists. You can have different number of parameters, or the data type of parameters are different. So it's different parameter numbers, parameter data types. So we can define different methods using the same name but different parameter lists. We call that a different method signature. So we have the same method name but a different method implementation. Method overriding is achieved by inheritance. We have methods exist in parent class, and we rewrite the method in a child class. That's called method overriding. Now let's start Eclipse by double-clicking eclipse.exe file. This is our last project from lesson 11. Let's create a new project for this lesson. New project. Select Java project. Click on Next. Project name. Lesson 12. Click on Next. Click on Finish. Module name. com.dr2academy. Java tutorial. Lesson 12. Click on Create. Right-click on Lesson 12. New. Click on Class. Package name. com.dr2academy. Java tutorial. Lesson 12. Name. Code tester. Click on Finish. Now let's create the main method. Public static void main stream brackets args braces. Now let's right-click on Lesson 12. New class. Now let's create a class called Calculator. Click on Finish. Now let's create a method to do add operation. Public static integer add integer x integer y braces return x plus y. Now we are going to define another method with the same name but a different return type and the parameter data type. Public static double add double x double y braces return x plus y. You see we have the same method name but a different parameter type. Of course, we can also define a method with the same name but a different number of parameters. Public static integer add integer x integer y integer z braces return x plus y plus z. Now let's go to the main method to test it out. Integer sum 1 integer sum 2 double sum integer sum 1 is calculator add 10 90 integer sum 2 is calculator add 10 20 90 double sum is calculator add 20.5 90.9. There. Did you notice we are using the class name calculator to call its method because the add is the static method, so we use the class name to call the static method. As we can see, these methods, they all have the same name, but they have different data type for their parameters or different number of parameters. Now let's put a breakpoint here. Double click here. Click on debugger. Step into it. Now we are getting into the add method with 2 integer parameters. So the value of int sum1 is 100. 10 plus 90 is 100. You can also see it here. It's 100, right? Now let's step into the second add method with 3 parameters. Now we are here. Another add method, but with 3 parameters. So it's 120 and sum2 is 120. 10 plus 20 plus 90. Now let's step into the third add method with 2 double parameters. So here we are in the add method with 2 double parameters and the returned double value. So the double sum value is 111.4. So this is a method overloading. We define 3 methods with the same name, but each method has different number of parameters or parameter data type and its own implementations. This is how we use method overloading. We define method with the same method name, add, but a different parameter data type or different number of parameters. Then we call the same method name to handle different type of parameters like integer, double, or different number of parameters. So we use the same method name to handle different tasks based on its parameter differences, like different number of parameters or different parameter data types. Now let me show you how to use inheritance to do method overriding. Click on Project Explorer. Right-click on Lesson 12, New Class. Let's create a base class called User. Click on Finish. Let's define member variable, stream, username, constructor, user, username with empty string, second constructor, public, user, parameter, stream, name, username is name, username is name. Now let's create another class. Teacher. It's a superclass user. Click on Finish. for teacher class, we declare its member variable title. Let's define the constructor. Super. Define another constructor. Parameter name, parameter title, super constructor name, let's call that teacher title. Teacher title is title. Let's define a method in base class user to get user info. Public stream get user info. Stream info. Username, system dot out dot print line info username return user info. Now let's add the get the user info to teacher class. Public stream get the user info stream user info. The info is username plus comma plus teacher title. Did you notice the red line over here? Under the username, if we put the mouse on top of the red line, you will see the error message. It said the field user.username is not visible? Well, that's because we define the username as a private here. So for our subclass to access the username variable, we need to change that to protected. Now let's come back to the teacher class. Now the red line disappeared. Return user info. Okay. Now we redefine the getUserInfo method by return the username plus the teacher title for the teacher class. Let's create another class called student. Right-click on lesson 12, class, student. Its superclass will be user. Click on finish. For student, define a member variable student GPA. Define constructor. Super. Let's define another constructor. With two parameters. First parameter is username. Second parameter is GPA. Call superclass constructor, passing the name parameter. Student GPA is assigned the value GPA. Let's redefine the method getUserInfo. UserInfo. Now let's assign value to the UserInfo. UserInfo is username plus column GPA plus student GPA. Print out. UserInfo. Return UserInfo. Let's compare it to the teachers getUserInfo. Let's also print out the user info. Print line user info. Now let's compare that to the get the user info in user class. Okay. Let's rewrite this. Control X. User info. Okay, now the three methods are more consistent. Get the user info, get the user info, and get the user info. Now click on code tester.java. Let's test out. We first comment out the code for method overloading. Now let's declare three user objects. User 1, user 2, user 3. User 1 is new user Jeff. Declare another string variable. Info1, info2, info3, info1 equals 1 dot get user info. User 2 is a new student. Alex, student name, GPA 3.9. Info2 equals 2. Get the user info. User 3 is new teacher. Linda. Professor. User info 3 equals user 3 dot get user info. So we declare three objects, user 1, user 2, user 3, based on the base class user. Then we create 3 objects. The first one, we create a user object and assign that object to user 1. Then we create a student object, assign that to user 2. And create a teacher object, assign that to user 3. Student and the teacher, they are all inherited from user. So let's see what we will get by calling the method getUserInfo of user 1 object, user 2 object, and the user 3 object. Let's put a breakpoint here, double click on this line, 17. Click on debugger. Create an object, user. Let's step into it. We are in the class user constructor. So we assign the name Jeff to username. Now let's call this function getUserInfo. Step into it. UserInfo is UserInfo Jeff. Now we are going to print out this UserInfo. Look at here, UserInfo Jeff. Here, we create a new object, student, and assign that to the user 2. The user 2 is a placeholder for student, but the user 2 is defined as base class user. Let's step into. Now we are in the student class. First we call the super name. Step into it. We are in the superclass users constructor username. So we have assigned the name Alex to username. Now we're going to assign the GPA 3.9 to student GPA. So we know the variable user2 is of type user, but the actual object we created and put it into the placeholder user2 is a student object. So when we call the getUserInfo, which method will be called? It's the users getUserInfo or students getUserInfo. Let's take a look. Just step into it. Click on here. There. So we stepped into the student class, right? So we have stepped into the getUserInfo method of student class. Since the object is the student object, so we are now in the getUserInfo method of student class. Now the user info is Alex, GPA 3.9. We print out this user info here. Return. Now we are going to create a new teacher object with the name Linda, and the title Professor. Let's step into it. We are in the constructor of teacher class. Step into the super. Now we are in the constructor of the superclass user. So we assign the name Linda to username. Now we are going to assign the title Professor to teacher title. This is a constructor of teacher class. Now we are going to call the getUserInfo method of the user3. We know the user3 is just a placeholder, right? The actual object is a teacher object. Let's step into it. See, this is a class teacher method. GetUserInfo. So we created the user info, username plus teacher title. Linda, Professor. Print out Linda, Professor. Assign the user info into user info 3 as the Linda Professor. As we can see, by using inheritance and the method overriding, we can achieve the polymorphism, which is the same name, get user info, but achieve different tasks. Let's summarize what we just learned about the Java polymorphism. Polymorphism means one object can have many forms. The Java polymorphism allows us to use the same method name for different method implementation. So we use the method overriding and the method overloading to achieve the Java polymorphism. Method overriding means methods have the same name but different parameter list. That means the number of parameters is different, or the parameter data type is different. The method overloading is achieved by the inheritance. So if we have a method exist in parent class, we can rewrite the method implementation in child class. In our next lesson, we are going to learn Java encapsulation. That's another important feature of the Java OO programming paradigm. And we will learn what is encapsulation and how to encapsulate our data. That's all for this lesson of Java polymorphism. I will see you next time. Bye.